Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. And in this video, I'd like to discuss the dividing line, something quite spicy, emerging from Trump's people insulting Europe at the weekend and siding with Russia. It is causing some quite significant dividing lines between Starmer and Trump on policy, all very diplomatic, obviously. But it's also creating some very interesting, very spicy dividing lines. There was a senior Tory reportedly today told Lee Anderson something, which I'm going to have to explain later in the video. It's not remotely suitable for those of a sensitive disposition. But shall we say this? Never mind what Badenoch is saying in public. Even senior Tories are turning on Trump here and not remotely impressed at Reform UK's grovelling at the Orange One's feet. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So yes, there was apparently a bit of a to-do in Parliament today, with a senior Tory telling a Reform UK MP, who was apparently Lee Anderson, something is not very family friendly. So I'll go over that bit later in the video, when the algorithm's gone to sleep. Shh. I talked recently about how the right wing is split on Russia-Ukraine after Julia Hartley-Brewer very strongly took Richard Tice to task over his Putin appeasement, right? But the same dividing lines are evident in Westminster as well. You won't see it in official statements, but in seemingly private conversations that are being overheard and reported by others. But at the government level, the divisions are growing by the week and they are official. There are now major differences on Trump's plans for tariffs, his plans to annex Gaza, his plans to give Putin whatever he wants. You know, we're still trying to flatter the hell out of him, but we're not going along with any of his bullshit when it comes to practical policies. And this is the line the government will continue to try and tread as long as it's possible to do so. So Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, yesterday I think it was, talked about being this bridge between America and Europe. And I saw some people say, yo, don't be ridiculous. Europe doesn't need the UK to speak for it. And I think this is a misunderstanding about what Reynolds was saying. So I get the misunderstanding, by the way, because we've always had this nonsense, haven't we, about being a bridge between the US and Europe. It was always ridiculous, just as ridiculous as the so-called special relationship. You know, it's just what we said to make ourselves feel a bit better after we lost the empire, you know, to get the benefits of close integration with Europe, but to keep essentially wishing we were like America. Superpower envy, basically. But this is a different prospect. Trump's not interested in what Europe has to say. He's just sent two senior members of his government to insult Europe on their own turf and defend Russia, the power literally invading us, while they were at it. This is, as I say, where a major fault line is developing on the right wing. I gather Badenoch is not exactly winning her MPs over with her own alignment with Trump on everything. Now, you know, you understand she's obviously going to be very diplomatic towards Trump, just like Keir Starmer has to be. And even more so for Badenoch because Republicans are a more natural fit for the Conservative Party, sure. But, you know, this idea that Europe can speak for itself right now is a complete nonsense. Trump's not listening. Trump's not listening. Trump has just sent people to Europe to stick two fingers up at us. But Starmer's on speaking terms with him and is meeting him in person next month. Now, I'm not suggesting we get our hopes up about what we might persuade Trump to do. Unlike Putin, Starmer is certainly not wrapping Trump around his little finger. Trump has a deep mistrust of Labour, but he is at least talking to us. And to not even try engaging is to forsake Ukraine, which would be unforgivable. So for this limited period of time on this specific but incredibly important issue, we actually can be that bridge which has been talked about in the past. And the thing is, the meeting that's going to take place with European leaders this week about what to do, I'll bet you that part of those discussions are going to be talking with Starmer about what can he try and persuade Trump of when he meets him. It might not work. This bridge might crash into the sea the second Trump puts his ponderous bulk onto it, but it is the only bridge we have. The only other European leader that Trump might listen to is like Viktor Orban, but he's another Putin mouthpiece, so he has nothing of value to say. But Starmer also talked about putting British troops on the ground in Ukraine. Now, this announcement is actually quite momentous. Starmer has been clear that he recognises this is a big decision, that it means risking British lives. That is because everyone knows there is no such thing as a peace agreement with Putin. These peace agreements with Russia exist only to allow Putin the time to rearm and reinvade. He's never stuck to an agreement in his life. if we send British forces to Ukraine, even after a peace agreement is reached, there is every chance they will see battle there. It might seem odd to think that Putin would directly attack NATO troops, but he has miscalculated already. He made a big mistake over his 2022 full-scale invasion. He thought he'd succeeded in dividing Europe enough. He hadn't. Brexit didn't stop us working with Europe on common defence in the way he thought it would. And he forgot that Trump was no longer in the White House at the time. Now, with Trump back in charge, he may imagine a couple of years' time, NATO will have been hollowed out. He may be right. But if the might of the Russian armed forces could be held back by Ukrainian forces and farmers, then a much depleted Russian force will still have its work cut out even against a NATO force with an American-sized hole in it. But the point is that Starmer has acknowledged that British troops could die as a result of this decision, but it's a decision he has to take anyway, because appeasement isn't going to work. What Europe are trying to do now is not just bolster their own forces to replace American ones, but persuade America not to leave too quickly. In fact, another thing Starmer did was actually criticise the way we pulled out of Afghanistan, how that was handled. Now, I've not seen anyone make a big fuss about this. Even maybe the Daily Mail don't want to make a big fuss of this. But he talked about how it was a mistake to deal with that without involving the Afghan government. There was like no talks with the Afghan government. Well, whose decision was that? It's Trump's during his first term. He's the one who invited the Taliban to Camp David and conducted all talks with them, just as he's aiming to hold talks here only with Russia, with Ukraine and Europe completely excluded. Indeed, the reason Macron has called this emergency European summit is a way of making Trump's meeting with Russia and Saudi Arabia basically pointless. Trump is trying to exclude Ukraine and Ukraine's allies from the talks. I saw it being described as a bit like a custody battle, where the child is the centre of the proceedings and the discussions, but takes no part in the discussions themselves. Europe, holding its own talks, completely undermines Trump's move. It's a way of saying, whatever you agree, completely meaningless. Without our agreement, you may as well just play a game of cards. And we're not agreeing to anything without being involved in the talks. Because the fact of the matter is that no matter what Trump does, there is no peace unless Ukraine agrees to the terms. Ukraine isn't actually a child in a custody battle, even if Trump is trying to approach these proceedings as if they are. And Ukraine should not have to agree to any terms which lets Russia win. Without American support, it's sadly likely to have to make unreasonable concessions, but there needs to be a limit. Starmer's already insisted that Ukraine is on an inevitable path towards NATO membership, another clear dividing line with Trump. And it also appears that the Conservatives are drawing lines with themselves to an extent, but Reform UK as well. So, wait a sec. Is the algorithm asleep yet? I think it is. So, some covert reporting on what's been said in Westminster this morning was interesting. So according to this account, there are actually a few little interesting exchanges, but a Reform UK MP, believed to be Lee Anderson, was tackled by a Tory whip. So a senior Tory MP, someone who is there to enforce the leadership's position with Conservative MPs, right? Sorry, kid, it's fingers and ears time, because there's no way, I can't clean this one up, sorry. It's not suitable for young'uns. So the Tory whip accused the Reform UK MP of giving Trump a metaphorical blowy, to which the Reform UK MP, which is believed to be Lee Anderson, replied, "Socialists see you next Tuesday." Then the Tory replied, "Sorry, I couldn't hear you with Musk's dick in your mouth." Then when they both noticed they were drawing a bit of attention, they stopped and went about their business. But what this shows is, behind the public facade, a real difference between the Tories and Reform UK, real hostility there. It was different when the Conservatives were taking money from Russian oligarchs because, as far as they were concerned, that was just screwing over the British public. But Putin's invasion is bad for the rich as well. Reform UK are like nihilistic Putin puppets, and Farage has always been that. They don't care. But the Conservatives now recognise Putin as a threat. Badenoch is still trying to vie for attention from potential MAGA donors as well as Trump's own strategists for help because you can't afford her own. So she's not backing Starmer on his latest moves on Ukraine, even though her predecessor, Rishi Sunak, is. But this is an issue which unites most of the country. And Badenoch's not interested in unity. But reading some of the things Tories have been saying today, and I'll link the fuller, it's not a verifiable account, but, in the description below, you can read it yourself. And we can start to see many on the right, including the Conservative Party, being clear that Putin is an enemy. They know that. They recognise that. More than that, If Trump sides with Putin, he's not our friend. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.